Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jerry Farley, creator of the YouTube channel The Harsh Truth. I've been pretty quiet for quite some months now, but in light of recent events, if you would bear with me, I'd like to tell you a story. It's a bit of a long one, so hang on. A little bit of background about me is I am a former United States Army soldier stationed right here at Fort Riley, Kansas, many moons ago, if you can't tell by the hair, many moons ago. My parents were military, their parents before them, so on and so forth, so it runs really deep in the family. But I'd like to tell you a story about a young man who I knew back in the early 2000s. I was stationed with him, Fort Riley, Kansas. And he was a good soldier. Wasn't a great one. He was a good one. He was young, just like any other soldier. You know, he partied hard, he worked hard, and did pretty much anything his chain of command told him, especially his first sergeant. His first sergeant looked out for him a lot, as well as one of the other E7s. He really looked up to. The C7, particularly E7, wanted this soldier to run the Army track team. He tried for a long time to get this young man to run the Army track team. It just didn't pan out, unfortunately. This young man was stationed with us, but within the first 2 years of him being at the unit with us at Fort Riley, he had gotten hurt really bad. You know, he suffered neck injuries, he suffered, cracked ribs and lower back injuries, soft tissue damage, fucked up his legs. It was pretty bad. But even with all that, he still pushed forward to be a good soldier. Again, not the best, but at least a good soldier. So for quite some time, he tried to go get seen for his injuries. I think he got seen like once or twice, but then his upper chain of command, not his first sergeant, his upper chain of command and other elements of the unit, for reasons I'm not going to get into, wouldn't let him get help. Every time he tried to get help, it was pretty much, for more or less, suck it up, quit being a bitch, soldier on. Which, in that era, okay, all right, but they didn't help him. So in his young and infinite wisdom, he started self-medicating, which wasn't the correct thing to do, but at the time, with everything going on, to include a divorce, he felt like he had nowhere else to turn. The chain of command wasn't listening, and other parts of his chain of command, their hands were being tied by upper chain of command. So he just self-medicated, kept pushing forward. And the crazy thing is, this young man never failed a piss test. Never once. But he kept soldiering. Things had gotten so bad after almost a year that this soldier tried to commit suicide. And it was just a combination of everything. His injuries that he couldn't get rid of, the constant pain, the shit marriage that he was in, it was just all bad. But he kept soldiering on with a smile on his face. And despite his injuries, he was probably one of the fastest people I'd ever seen run in the 541st. And his run record was probably held for almost shit 15 years before somebody else broke it. PT stud. He really was. I don't condone him having and self-medicating. He was using marijuana to not get high, but to be able to sleep and to be able to function with the massive amount of pain that he was in. But it all came to a head. In the 541st Maintenance Battalion, I guess there had been some issues with some 1st Maintenance soldiers bringing heavy drugs in from Texas and from California. And when one of these particular soldiers got caught, he threw everybody else under the bus, even people who had no direct dealings with him, for lack of a better term. And one of those people happened to be that soldier that I knew. The soldier who wasn't technically bothering anybody. Now, once again, I don't condone him self-medicating. He was in the military. He should have been doing that. But he had his reasons. And I believe that his chain of command, well, most of his chain of command failed him. Again, his first sergeant stuck by him and tried to make him a better soldier. And to this day, his first sergeant has his back. But when the other soldier got caught, he threw everybody under the bus. And from what I understand, the soldier had been out one night with a girlfriend at the time, and he got back to his barracks room, and about midnight, 2 ununiformed CID agents went to his room, his barracks room, and said, can we talk to you for a minute? Now, while all the drug stuff was going on, there had also been a sexual assault that had happened in the barracks, and the soldier thought that's what the CID was going to ask him about. So he was like, "Sure, I'll come with you. We'll talk about that, because I don't know anything, but I'll be as much help as I can, because nobody wants people committing sexual assault in the barracks." So he went with them. When he got to the CID office on Fort Riley, Kansas, that's when they started questioning him about him selling drugs on post, selling marijuana on post. And he denied it. He's like, "I'm not selling marijuana." And then they were like, "Well, we were informed by your company commander and your battalion commanders that you were selling drugs on post and in Junction City. You were making phone calls and on a cell phone and meeting people and all that good stuff," which is kind of crazy because that guy didn't even have a cell phone. That's the messed up part. So, let me backtrack some. When they came and got him, he told his girlfriend to drive herself home because she didn't have a car. So he was like, "Just take my car and just bring it back to me in the morning." So she took his car, which unfortunately is where he was hiding his marijuana, because he didn't want to bring it to the barracks. Like I said, it was bad enough he was smoking it. He didn't want it to be in the barracks, trying to do some semblance of the right thing. So CID badgered, physically assaulted, and berated this intoxicated 20-year-old kid who had already been through the ringer, who was already suffering from PTSD and, nightmares and all kinds of other shit, and obvious trust issues. CID, as I gather the story, hit this kid so hard in his left eye that he, to this day, is now partially blind in his left eye. then made him call his girlfriend to bring his car back on post. And his girlfriend was Hispanic, so he asked her in Spanish to bring the car back, because he needs it back at the barracks. And in the middle of him asking that, they struck him again in the left side of his head, this time causing a ringing in his ear. They brought the car back. They made him give them consent to search the car, which he did because he was kind of scared at that point, because they were saying, if you do not bring us the car or sign this confession, which, yeah, they had a whole confession already written out. All he had to do was sign it. And if he didn't sign his confession, that they were going to charge him with more worse crimes and this, that, and the third, and he'll spend, next 15 years in prison. And yeah, they laid it on thick for like 4 or 5 hours. So this kid was tortured by CID on Fort Riley, Kansas for 4 hours. And when the ordeal was finally done, and he made it back to his unit about 6 o'clock that next morning. His face was all battered, and his nose was bleeding, his eye socket was bleeding. And his first sergeant asked him what happened. And he told his first sergeant that, hey, Top, I got kind of rowdy in Aggieville, I'm fine. I'm fine. Because at the time, the unit didn't know what was going on. Well, his first sergeant didn't know what was going on at the time. So let's fast forward about 6 months after he has to live with this shit and the threat of being kicked out of the military. He's finally tried. He's finally been being tried for his crime of, get this, not just possession of marijuana, but because the amount that he had, he was tried and convicted of the attempted manufacture of marijuana and the attempted distribution of marijuana. Or possession with the intent to distribute marijuana. And the only evidence they had against this kid was the fact that he had marijuana and a confession that was literally beat out of him. So let's fast forward another month, because they stuck him in Gary County for a couple of weeks while he was waiting pretrial confinement. And even though his company commander, his battalion commander, had told his first sergeant not to go to that trial, not to speak on that soldier's behalf, they even threatened to take his rank if he had did so. They had threatened to take his unit from him. They were going to kick him down from being a first sergeant. That first sergeant still went to that trial and spoke on that young man's behalf. Crazy, isn't it? That other E7 that wanted him to run track, he was there. Half of his unit was there. And that judge sat there and told that kid, I'm going to put you in prison for the next year. I'm going to take all your rank, and then I'm going to discharge you from the Army. So let's fast forward a couple more months. He's sitting in prison in Fort Sill, Oklahoma, where he's trying to, apply for clemency and do all the things that he's supposed to do, as far as, hey, I messed up, but is there something I can do? He went through all the steps. That was the first time he was denied upgrade in his punishment. Here's the kicker. They released him after 6.5 months. And then the Army used him for another 3 years. 3 years they used him. And then they kicked him out with a bad conduct discharge. a code for reenlistment, which means you're no longer able to reenlist in the military. And since he got a bad conduct, now he's also barred from VA benefits. So all of his service-related injuries, which to include that accident that he got into, a year or so before, he can't get help for. He can't get help for the fact that he's partially blind in his left eye and almost completely blind or deaf in his left ear. So let's fast forward to 2007. Not 7, excuse me. Let's fast forward to 2017. He's trying to apply for his bad conduct to be upgraded so he can at least get VA benefits. Now, at this point, he is actually a teacher at the Job Corps in Manhattan, Kansas. So he's really turned his life around. Now let's fast forward to 2023. Now he's a dad. He's got 2 kids. In that whole time that I just mentioned, he was so bad off that he fucked up his marriage, man. He lied. He was cheating. He was verbally abusive, but his brain was so fucking scrambled. Hell, at one point, he had to be put on lithium because of his anger issues and everything else, and nobody would listen to him about the nightmares and none of the other shit. They just doped him up and sent him on his way. He finally got out of all that. So now he's raising these 2 children, and he's trying to cut out life for himself. But now it's 2023, and he's trying to apply again. One last time. One last time. Everybody's telling him, hey, you can get that discharge upgraded. 8 months go by, and they say, we regret to inform you that you've been denied. This decision is final. And during the process of him writing this last packet, he actually confessed to his old first sergeant about what happened that night. And his first sergeant said, I wish you would have told me what happened, and I would have fought for you. I did fight for you. But you cannot let that eat you up now. After all this time, that first sergeant is still sticking by this soldier's side. It's just crazy, right? But the company commander that lobbied so hard against him had the gall to add this soldier on Facebook. I mean, I know it's fucking childish, but had the gall to add him on Facebook, showing, how great her life turned out. I bet you she sleeps well. Meanwhile, this kid, for almost 2 decades, can't get a night's sleep without the nightmares and the flashes of pain, and feel like you're being burned alive, waking up screaming, cold sweats. Can't even sleep next to anybody because you wake up, you punch them by accident or you elbow them. But I bet she sleeps well. Moral of the story, kids. Oh, in the letter that he got back, they had the audacity to tell this guy, hey, we applaud your years of sobriety. Like he was smoking weed to get high. It's like, no, bitch, this kid was smoking weed to quiet the demons in his fucking head, to be able to get some sleep, to be able to function, with the shooting pains from his knees and lower back because of the injuries that he sustained. But you're going to tell him, thank you, we applaud your sobriety. Moral of the story, kids. While I absolutely would join the Army again right now, I will say that be wary of your chain of command that is not going to actually be there for you. I'm not saying getting in trouble is the right thing to do and then that you hold no fault at all. But understand that not everybody's going to have your back. So if you join the military, make sure that you are on your P's and Q's and you understand what the military really is about. Because, yeah, it's about all that rah rah go freedom stuff. It is. Absolutely is. That will never change my opinion on that. But there is definitely a darker side of the military that nobody wants to talk about. So just be wary. If you're still here after 21 minutes, thank you for listening to this story about that soldier I knew. He's doing good. Well, he's trying to anyway. He went from being a scared, lost kid to a grown man who learned to live with pain, who became numb to it, made him a stronger man, but his chain of command failed him. And that is the harsh truth. Thank you. You guys have a great night.